Here's what I wish someone told me about when I first started sewing. Hey friends, welcome back to Karla Created. I'm Karla, and in this video I'm going to share with you all the things that I wish someone told me back when I first started sewing, which was, spoiler alert, over 20 years ago. Let's get into it. I'm the kind of person who just likes to wing things. And when I say wing things, kind of learn and figure things out as I go. But I understand that not everyone is like that. And I also understand that that is probably not the most efficient way to learn how to do things. So I'm going to share this information with you that I have gleaned from the last 20 years of my sewing journey, of winging it and trying and failing and learning, so then you can learn and maybe avoid some of the pitfalls and failures that I've experienced in the last 20 years when it comes to the sewing skill that I have developed. My top 5 things that I think anyone who wants to start sewing needs to know. And I have tested these things with my sister, who literally got her first sewing machine this year. Very, very exciting. And I gave her essentially these tips, and she has just excelled exponentially quicker than what I did on my sewing journey. So the first thing that you need to know is that you need quality tools. When I say quality, I don't necessarily mean super expensive, but I would definitely invest in these things to get you started at a bare minimum. Fabric scissors. Now, something that my sister didn't understand when I was teaching her how to sew is the importance of having dedicated scissors just for fabric and textiles. Do not use your fabric scissors for anything else other than fabric. This is important because it can actually wear down the blade, which impacts the accuracy of your cutting, and it can also then make it kind of difficult to cut through fabric cleanly. She was about to use just some crappy old kitchen drawer scissors that were literally rusting, and I said, no, we need to take you to Spotlight and get you some appropriate tools. So the first tool is fabric scissors. The second tool is a seam ripper. When you are learning to sew, you will inevitably make sewing mistakes, and a seam ripper is the best tool to undo those mistakes. There's all sorts of seam rippers on the market. Now, this video is definitely not any kind of sponsored video about different types of brands or anything like that. This is my favorite one here. I'm not even going to share the brand, but get a good quality one if you can, because they last a lot longer and they're a lot sharper as well. You will benefit from getting a measuring tape. Now, you can find these at Spotlight or anywhere, or you can even get those paper ones that they provide at places like IKEA. I would recommend using something that has both centimeters and inches, because in this sewing space, a lot of things are measured in inches and fractions. So you'll need to wrap your head around that, particularly if you are wanting to sew from patterns. You will also need pins or clips. This helps you keep the fabric together when you're sewing. I also have this magnetic pin holder, which is really handy, but you don't need to use this. You can make yourself a pin cushion or buy a pin cushion. These clips, which I only recently started using a couple of years ago, are absolutely fantastic to have. I did buy my sister some of these as well, and she's already finding them really useful. And then the last thing is getting some good quality thread. I think threads can be very misunderstood, and I was definitely a victim of not really understanding the difference between good quality threads and lesser quality threads, and would just buy any old threads from any old shop and not thinking about the kind of finish that they would provide on my garments. So this is important. There's lots of different threads out there. My favorite in Australia is the Gutermann thread. They are slightly more expensive than the standard threads like this from Birch. Just keep that in mind and consider the quality of the thread that you're buying when you buy it. And last but not least is a sewing machine. Of course, I mean, unless you want to go down the whole hand sewing route, which is perfectly fine, get yourself a sewing machine. Any machine will do. I would recommend, however, avoiding those really cheap sort of hand stitching machines or those kiddie targeted sewing machines, because you will probably encounter lots of problems with tension, which can result in threads getting all tangled on your fabric or the fabric being pulled down into the bobbin area. I have a Benina. If you've watched some of my other short videos, I do joke about my Benina. I call her Nina, and she's my bestie because I spend a lot of time with her. And prior to getting my Benina, I had a brother, and I still have that brother. I gave it to my mum, and I think she uses it. I'm not overly sure, but that has been going for 20 odd years. So think of it lasting you a really, really long time. Once you have a sewing machine and you learn the basics of sewing, it actually is such a valuable skill in leading you down a more of a sustainable path when it comes to your garments and the things that you own, because it gives you the ability to repair them. It gives you the ability to refashion things, resize things. It is such a massively eye-opening skill to have. Let's get on to the next point. The next thing that you absolutely need to understand, different needles for different fabrics. This is something that I literally had no idea about until maybe 5 years ago. I was honestly using the universal needle that comes with any sewing machine and you can buy from any store for all fabrics, because I literally thought that the word universal meant universal, as in for all fabrics. This is not the case. Some fabrics require specific needles. For example, stretch fabric. Here is a list from my sewing machine's guide of all of the different needle types required for different types of fabric. I will link another simpler version of this that I found on Pinterest in the description box below to help you out. But as a rule of thumb, just remember, universal does not mean every fabric. You're probably wondering, why is it even important to know this about the different needles for different fabrics? Well, if you use the wrong needle for the wrong kind of fabric, say you use a universal needle with stretch fabric on your domestic sewing machine, you are not going to get accurate stitches. You will see things on your fabric like skipped stitches, and you might even encounter issues with piercing the fabric. So another great example, and if you've seen my video where I attempted to make a denim skirt out of an old pair of jeans, if you were to attempt sewing denim with a universal needle, you would almost certainly break that needle very, very quickly. And even in saying that, when I sew denim with a denim needle, I'm almost guaranteed to still break the needle. So that's why understanding the different needles for different fabric types is really important. So the fabrics that I would recommend starting out with are things like cotton, standard woven cotton fabrics. The easiest way to, if you don't understand different fabric types, is just avoid things that are stretchy. Avoid fabrics that are kind of silky or slippery as well, because they're going to be a little bit more difficult for you to sew with. Because when you're starting out, you don't want to attempt sewing with fabric that is problematic if you don't have the right level of skill, because it will disengage you and it can be quite disheartening. Take it from me, I have been there. I've been there. It put me off for a very, very long time. Let me clarify, when it comes to stretch fabrics, the reason why I'm recommending avoiding them until you have the right skill is because they're a completely different kettle of fish to sew. You need to use zigzag stitch for all seams. You've got to be really, really careful, because a straight stitch on stretch fabric can be very problematic because it doesn't allow the stretch. So there's all these different things that you've got to consider with stretch, which I will do a separate video about if you're interested in learning how to sew with stretch fabric. But this is just a little snippet into the reasons why I'm recommending perhaps not to attempt sewing with stretch until you've got your skill level up and to help you on your sewing journey. The next thing that I would recommend is to pick simple projects like tote bags, toiletries bags, cushion covers or pillowcase covers. You could even attempt making some simple stretchy waist skirts. I would recommend getting some fabrics from the thrift store or op shop, because they're a lot cheaper than buying brand new fabrics from your fabric store. And it's a much lower risk if you are, say, refashioning something, hemming a top and making it cropped. It also gives you a chance to practice practice, practice, practice. If you are new to sewing, you're going to want to practice things like winding bobbins. You're going to want to practice things like threading your machine needle and putting your bobbin into the bobbin case. You're going to want to practice folding your hems, cutting out things with enough seam allowance, right? You're also going to want to practice stitching, straight stitching, zigzag stitching. There is so many things to learn, so I encourage you to practice, practice, practice. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, because if you follow these recommendations that I've provided, you're going to be setting yourself up effectively to avoid a lot of failure. Don't want you to become disengaged from failing. We want you to be well set up to practice, maybe make a couple of mistakes that you can learn from, and then remain engaged in the sewing experience, so then you continue to get better and better and better. Because like I said, sewing is such an incredible skill to have. It helps with sustainability in the environment, because you can repair your own clothes, refashion clothes, and make your own clothes as well. So that's it. That is what I wish that I was told when I first started sewing more than 20 years ago, because it would have saved me a lot of frustration and headache, and I probably would have learned to sew a lot quicker by avoiding all of those moments where I became disengaged because of failure. And obviously now the world is full of so much more accessible information when it comes to everything, pretty much. More so than it was 20 years ago when I first started. So that's why I'm making this video. I really hope it helps you, and it's the basic information that you need if you're like me and you just want to understand bare minimum things so you can start winging it confidently. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, especially if you want to see the video that I'm doing very, very soon on stretch fabrics and things to consider. See you in the next one. Bye.